Dear colleagues, dear friends, we start our roundtable. Our topic is very important, interesting. 30 years of joining Ukraine to the NATO Program Partnership for Peace, from the development of military cooperation to reforms and assistance in countering Russian armed aggression. We have representatives from NATO, Ms. Karen Makobriy, head of the NATO representative office. We have defense attaches from the NATO countries, and we have Mr. Volodymyr Ogryzko, Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2007-2009. We have other experts, military analysts, with whom we will be introduced in the course of these activities. My name is Serhiy Dzherzh. I'm head of
Раду при Міністерстві закордонних справ України, яка теж є співорганізатором нашого заходу. І ми вдячні Центру інформації та документації НАТО за підтримку цього проєкту. Так як тема у нас військово-політична, політико-військова.
As is today we are talking about the military topic, I want to mention that I'm a senior lieutenant in Armed Forces of Ukraine. I served 19 months as a military. I was serving near Bakhmut, and I'm a combat veteran of the armed forces, and I want again to thanks to the NATO member countries for the support they're providing to us for their personal protection equipment supplied for the ammunitions, and both NATO standard and former Soviet standard. This provision of the IFAX, with very high quality tourniquets. We receiving volunteer support in form of vehicles, that are supporting activities of our forces on the front line. With these words of thanks, I want to pass the floor to Ms. Karen Makobriy, head of the NATO representative office in Ukraine. Всім доброго дня.
This 2024 is a year with several very important dates, including, of course, the 75th anniversary of the signing of NATO's founding document, the Washington Treaty. And, of course, 30 years ago, the Partnership for Peace Programme was created as a strategic step in strengthening the partnership mechanisms for non-NATO nations and allowing them to better cooperate with the alliance, to exchange information and to modernise their militaries in line with modern democratic standards. For many countries, Partnership for Peace became the first step towards NATO membership, with each having its own pace and its own path. Ukraine's path is unique. Partners were encouraged to choose their own level of involvement with the alliance, and Ukraine was one of the first countries to join the PFP and chose very close engagement. Ukraine has a long history of participating in major NATO-led operations and missions, and for years Ukraine remained the only non-member that has contributed to all of them. For 30 years, through participation in multiple Partnership for Peace mechanisms, including Building Integrity Programme, the Professional Development Programme for civilian personnel employed in Ukrainian security institutions, and the DEEP Programme, Ukraine has increasingly implemented policies and projects that have brought her closer to NATO. All these mechanisms are still up and running, while Ukraine has also made significant steps closer to NATO, with some of the historical decisions taken at the Vilnius summit. While removing the requirement for the Membership Action Plan, and thus reducing Ukraine's membership to NATO to a one-step process, the adapted annual national program has changed significantly the way that Ukraine will deal with the reform agenda. The annual national program, previously a very large document, is now much smaller, much more strategic, much more goal-driven, and much more targeted. We welcome that Ukraine has started work on all of the tasks in the ANP, adapted ANP. There is constant coordination between Kiev and Brussels in the new format established at the Vilnius Summit, the NATO-Ukraine Council, which works both at the strategic, political level and as a very practical instrument. Politically, it is of the utmost importance. It's not only about changing the name from the NATO-Ukraine Commission to the NATO-Ukraine Council. The key difference is that now Ukraine sits at the table as an equal partner in decision-making between the United Kingdom, sitting at the table between the United Kingdom and Turkey. And Ukraine has an equal voice in the decision-making process. This decision to establish the NATO-Ukraine Council was a very strong political message. The NATO-Ukraine Council has already met several times in different formats at a number of levels, including ministerial level. We've discussed a variety of issues, including the upcoming reform programme and the protection of energy infrastructure, for instance. Another key decision taken at Vilnius was the introduction of the multi-year comprehensive assistance programme, which means that the programme we can now plan with Ukraine will be on a multi-year basis and has a longer-term future. The Comprehensive Assistance Programme is one of the most effective formats in practical assistance to Ukraine. It was created in 2016, but as I said, taken to the next level by turning it into the multi-year programme at the Vilnius Summit. The Comprehensive Assistance Programme focuses, as far as NATO is concerned, and I'm talking NATO now, not allies, focuses on non-lethal assistance and works to support the recovery and modernisation of the Ukrainian defence and security sector. There's a very important line of effort in the Comprehensive Assistance Package programme that looks at transitioning Ukraine towards NATO interoperability. NATO is developing an interoperability roadmap which will involve the full transition of Ukraine's defence and security sector to NATO standards. And this is obviously a very large piece of work. That's just one example of some of the work going on in the Comprehensive Assistance Package. It is a very broad but prioritised piece of work. So a couple of points in closing. I'd like to reiterate that from my perspective, from NATO's perspective, Ukraine is closer to NATO now than ever before. There is a lot of work still on many tracks to bring Ukraine even closer to the alliance. But we're building on former achievements, relationships and trust built over the last 30 years of Ukraine's involvement in the Partnership for Peace programme. We look forward to the implementation of the adapted annual national programme and as the NATO representation here on the ground to facilitating the Alliance's core mission and activities and continuing to cooperate closely with our Ukrainian colleagues on strategic and operational issues. NATO remains committed in its political and practical support to Ukraine. I wish you a fruitful dialogue today. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Ms. Maktir. We have simultaneous translation from Ukrainian to English, so please use headphones to hear the translation in English of our work. I want to pass the floor to one of the first military diplomats who start the work on Ukraine-NATO partnership, because military practical aspects were very important for this, for the pragmatic reforms of Ukraine armed forces. So Petro Kanana, military diplomat, retired colonel of the General Staff. He was working in the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Ministry of Defense. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Yes, today we have an historical event. Because on February 8, 1994, Ukraine, as Karen mentioned, was one of the first of the former Soviet Union countries and former Warsaw Pact countries signed a framework document. Minister of Foreign Affairs Anatoly Zlenko was signing this document. What is the historical importance of this document? My words will echo with the words of Karen. Importance of the document lays in the sphere that this document opened doors to all partner countries to start adopting experience of democratic changes in their countries, and with within the framework of practical cooperation with alliance, including military cooperation. And because we are short of time, I want to say about how I perceive this document, and I want to frame 3 key points of this document. Number 1, based on the provisions of the framework document, were appointed first liaison officers in NATO HQ, Lieutenant Colonel Oleksandr Galaka, and second one into the Partnership Coordination Cell in the Shapel, Lieutenant Colonel Konstantin Wojtowski. These 2 officers coordinating the activities via a legendary person, Ambassador of Ukraine to Brussels, Boris Tarasyuk. And he later in 1997-98 he established a full-scale Ukraine-NATO mission, Ukraine mission at NATO. This is number 1. Number 2 key point of this framework document, that NATO took obligation to establish PARP, planning annual process. According to this PARP, all partners, including Ukraine, had opportunity to learn how to plan use of military and defense resources, how to achieve interoperability, and very good example of all these activities. Like I will mention soon point number 3, which is the last paragraph of the framework document, is that NATO undertook, together with partners, to develop doctrines, strategies on how partners should achieve interoperability when they want to become NATO members in future or to remain partners with NATO and be involved in peacekeeping in European Atlantic region. So a good example of these 3 points we saw in an example of Finland and Sweden. These countries, due to PARP, achieved such a level of interoperability that when they submitted their applications, they were able to become NATO members quite fast. All provisions Yes, why this document is of historical importance? All its provisions were included into compulsory, legally binding bilateral document between Ukraine and NATO, which is called Charter on Distinguished Partnership between NATO and Ukraine. This document became an integrated part of NATO acquis, and this is also put into the key policy document, membership action plan, NATO membership plan. That's why the framework document of the PFP enabled all partners to develop partnership relations in all spheres by using initially working partnership work programs, and in 2021 this PWP documents were renamed into a partnership menu document. And now, as an example of from 21st century, when the use of partnership program during our national liberation war against Russian aggression, we implement various projects at the level of youth. I give an example. We have a project named Cyber Jura Foresight, youth cyber partnership, which is joined by the cadets from Lithuania, Poland and Ukraine. Ivan Drilenko will be able to tell a little bit more about this project. Vice President of the International Academy of Cyber Informational System Academy. I will later be glad to answer any questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe there will be questions because we perceive NATO as the political and military alliance because politicians, they're the first who are taking decisions within this alliance. And Mr. Volodymyr Ogryzko was one of the first diplomats who started working in the NATO HQ. My question is to you. What was your vision of how Ukraine will work with NATO in 30 years? Thank you, Serhiy. I want to congratulate you with the anniversary of this document, but I want to broaden the context of how we perceive now this document. Back in 1992, these were like in the first months of 1992. We had no mission to NATO, and by the decision of the Minister Zlenko, the functions of liaison with NATO was put on the ambassador of Ukraine in France, and on me as the head of the consulate in Germany. So I was one of the two first Ukrainian diplomats who entered the doors of NATO HQs. Yeah, so the emotions were moderate. We looked at as how normal people are working, so we saw that there are very interesting plans, and indeed this inspired us. But let's talk not about anniversaries but about the reality. Let's see what happened within these 30 years. Whether Ukraine became a NATO member. No, it didn't. When I was still working back in Germany, I was a counselor, but I always wasn't shy to go to my top management and ask them not easy questions. And that And I asked a very blunt question: when Ukraine became NATO member and EU, and I received a very concise answer. You know, the Baltic countries, the decision is made. On Ukraine, decision is not made. So this decision wasn't made for 30 years until today. That's why we can tell about many programs, about different plans and strategies, anything we can talk about. But the result, friends, well, do we have it? Why it happened in this manner? Let's go back and look from the broader perspective. Our NATO friends were under influence of Russia, perception because our NATO friends, they invented perception of Russia. Because when Yeltsin came back in 1992 to US, and they were talking about three main points. Russia will be democratic. Yes, we see now how far democratic they became. So like for the and back then, in 2 years, they started to bombing their parliament from tanks. So in 1 year, they started first Chechen war, like very democratic way of resolving your internal issues with your citizens. He promised that Russia will be anti-communistic, that communist ideology is over. What we see back in 1996, Yeltsin almost, like at a very thin margin, won against communist Zyuganov. Yeltsin said back then that Russia will be peaceful, peace-loving country. I mentioned already first Chechen war, then it was time for the second Chechen war, where 300,000 citizens of Chechen nationals were physically eliminated. We are not talking what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh, about what was happening in Georgia, Abkhazia, and all this was missed by our NATO friends. Why? Because NATO decided that Russia is friend. They're good friends. Putin is good politicians. Everyone wants to be friends with him, to reset. They wanted to reset the relations when they were pressing. Miss Clinton was pressing a button, and then Russians bluntly start saying, "We Russians will attack NATO." And what was the reaction of our NATO friends? Zero. They didn't want to hear it because their logic is different. Russia is a friend. We building a joint space between Lisbon and Vladivostok. And then back in 2008, there was Russian aggression into Georgia. NATO closed eyes on that aggression. And in 3 months, the relations were business as usual. And Putin, that led to the Putin's aggression to Ukraine, and that's what happened. When we talk about our cooperation with NATO, of Ukraine with NATO, unfortunately, NATO didn't have strategy about Ukraine and doesn't have it now, because number one, position was about perception of Russia was totally wrong. The NATO missed that they created a fascist regime, so like Russism. This is an ideology of Putin's regime. So I want to pass a small present to Ms. Karen Maktir. It's in 2 languages, and there are many answers to the questions I raised. And on why NATO reacts on Russia in this way? Because they're afraid of Russia. NATO is 10 times fold has advantage over Russia, but they're still afraid of Russia. Why? I'm sorry. Because crazy Medvedev says that we will launch nukes on you. Friends, with such an approach, unfortunately, we will not be able to achieve peace in the North Atlantic region. So I think that our friends in NATO should make very tough and concise decisions, because Putin's fascist regime only understands the logic of force. And finally, our friends in NATO should understand that. Thank you, Mr. Volodymyr. Again, the Partnership for Peace program was joined by 34 countries. 15 countries that joined this program already became NATO members. So among them was Finland, which is already a NATO member, and we're expecting a membership of Sweden. So it's interesting how today Ukraine develops its relations on the within the Partnership for Peace program, how relevant this program is. And I want to pass the floor to Mr. Valentin Levchik, Deputy Military Representative of the Mission of Ukraine to NATO. Good day, dear colleagues. First of all, I want to say words of thanks for this event to the for NIDC and NATO Ukraine Civic League, because many times we said, as it was said today, this program was launched back in 1994, and it was answer to the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, in order to include Central European countries into European architecture of security. So there was need of avoiding vacuum of security in this region. So it was based on security support and on supporting joint values. The framework document that included very particular obligations that to be undertaken by each country, each participant, to participate within this program, to achieve the goals of the program. And these goals are still relevant for us to achieve democratic and civil control over the military of the armed forces, development of military cooperation with NATO in joint planning, in trainings, in increasing capabilities, and in conducting joint military operations and programs, and support of units that are capable, that are interoperable with NATO countries. And it is mentioned that the key role this program will play a key role on the way of partner countries to the membership in NATO. And back in 1999 to 1923, 15 countries already became NATO members, and we are waiting for Sweden to join NATO. So, but we say that romantic initial period of our relations within this program already finished. Now, this program includes 16 countries. Considering the fact that cooperation with Russian Federation and Belarus, who are formally members of this program, is suspended. These 16 countries that I'm mentioning, they're very different by their security interest and how they want to work within this program. We can separate them in number of countries. So, aspiring countries, Ukraine, Georgia, Macedonia, their aim is to become member of NATO alliance. European countries who are not NATO members, countries of Central Asia, former Soviet Union countries in Caucasus and Moldova, and Serbia, the only Balkan country that haven't joined NATO yet and is not aspiring to do so. Ukraine, by its participation in all practical formats of this program, planning and evaluation of forces, interoperability concepts, extended capabilities programs, we have a very special way of cooperating with NATO, and the last form of this cooperation is Ukraine-NATO Council. So we moved to the planned model of work, and we are now working as equal. We have an equal vote with our partners. And back in Vilnius summit, there were made decisions on how Ukraine can be assisted in order to achieve interoperability with NATO countries. During the Vilnius summit last year, the allies agreed, decided that it will be a multi-year program in order to support Ukraine in short, middle and long-term prospects. And in line of supporting Ukraine with critical non-lethal support, NATO is working with us on three areas on middle and long-term perspective. Number one is institutional transformation, reconstruction, and operational interoperability. And in these three areas, we are now implementing a number of very important projects. We are renewing a roadmap of interoperability Ukraine-NATO by using defense planning of NATO, reform of the procurement system of Ukraine military armed forces, reforming of anti-aircraft defense of Ukraine, joint center of analysis and training in Ukraine, humanitarian demanding programs, a number of projects in medical sphere, creation of protected information systems to exchange information between Ukraine and NATO countries. And all these projects are currently running. And to finalize my brief presentation, I want to say that tragic events that happened in Ukraine starting from back to 2014 in full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine didn't stop our cooperation with NATO, but just added pragmatism and to this cooperation. We want to develop our relations with NATO in order to achieve our main goal, to become a NATO member. This will be the key for resolving our joint security issues, both today and in future. Thank you for attention. Valentin, thank you for the updates from the Brussels, from our representative office in NATO, and it's important that you emphasized that this program is not closing down, but even during the full-scale aggressions, it's speeding up. Because Russian-Ukraine war caused increased number of injured veterans who require rehabilitations, and my question is to Ms. Iryna Nikorak, People's Deputy of Ukraine, head of the Veterans Rehabilitation Subcommittee of the Committee of Verkhovna Rada on Social Policy and Protection of Veteran Rights. How Parliament is supporting on the legislative level rehabilitation of Ukrainian veterans. Thank you, Serhiy, for invitations. Greeting colleagues. I planned to speak about something different, but I've heard your question and I will answer it, because our subcommittee on veteran rehabilitation was formed back in September on my initiative. We didn't have such subcommittee, and because the war is going on back in 2014, we have almost 1 million of combat veterans in Ukraine, and we expected that in nearest future the total number of combat veterans will be 4 or 5 million. In every Ukrainian family there will be one or more members who are veterans. I don't see comprehensive, understandable state policy regarding combat veterans, but I want to emphasize that we have to focus around two words: protection and respect. Protection, because men and women who are fighting on the front line for many months have to understand that our society will make everything possible to adapt them back to the civilian life. Now we are discussing the issues that we have, the most persistent ones. Recently, during the forum of the role of women in achieving peace, together with representatives of rehabilitation centers from all over Ukraine, we were discussing those matters. At the end of February, we will have a roundtable on that issue, and I invite everyone to participate in it. Currently, the situation is following. We have more than 50,000 men and women with amputees. The largest rehabilitation center in Ukraine, Галичина, which is located in Lviv Oblast, provided around 1,000 prosthetics to our combat veterans. So this is just for you to understand the scale of this issue for our veterans. On my side, I'm visiting all rehabilitation centers all around Ukraine, both state institutions and private institutions that are working at the state business partnership level, when international and Ukrainian charity funds, Ukrainian business invest into rehabilitation of veterans on all levels: medical, physiological, prosthetics, psychological and psychiatry support. So I think there are a lot of challenges on these issues, a lot of work to be done, and this is the attention should be both from the parliament, from the government, from the civil society, for us to learn how to be tolerant and inclusive in relation to the combat veterans. If we take, with regards to today's event, I'm very grateful for that you organized it. I just say a couple of words what I was involved in starting from 2022, when the full-scale aggression started. We were able to start a reform of procurement of armed forces Ukraine. Ms. Oksana Grigoryeva is here. She supported us immensely. Thanks to all NATO member countries who are supporting us with this. You know that today more than 60,000 women are serving in armed forces, and the defense sector is in the defense sector, this number is even higher, and this is one of the largest number of women serving in defense sector among NATO countries. And so by supporting them, we are we are achieving the NATO standards, and recently, together with Natalia Gumenkova, we were presenting finally a military female uniform that is approved, and starting from this year, Ministry of Defense will be procuring our women servicemen with female models of personal protection equipment. This is another step of gender equality that we were working on since back in 2009. And when we're creating conditions for the women to serve in armed forces, and this motivates them to serve there, and this increases the defense capabilities of the country. Thank you, Ms. Iryna. I think there will be questions to you during our Q&A sessions. And now I want to pass the floor to the Minister of Youth and Sport, 2014-2018, and now he's the head of Information Defense Project Open Policies, Ihor Koziy. Thank you. And I'm also member of the Civil Council of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I want to start my speech with words of thanks to our armed forces who are protecting our independence and our freedom. And Serhiy, he was fighting as the senior lieutenant. I met with him as a volunteer back at the end of May. We conducted a joint conference before the Vilnius summit. Yes. And he was talking to us from the front line. This was very interesting experience. Today we are talking about the Partnership for Peace program. This was historical time, because in the conditions of multi-vector policies, and during the visit organized by the Konrad Adenauer Fund, we visiting NATO HQ, and then we understood that NATO is the civilized people with whom we should cooperate. The historical importance of this program and how it can help support us now, I think that all efforts should be aimed at one thing: on preparing Ukraine to become a NATO member. The only goal, task, whatever we do within this goal, in enhancing military cooperation, implementing standards, this can be identified in the NPs, and I think that my opinion about the situation after Vilnius summit, it was not a breakthrough in our relations. Yes, we created Ukraine-NATO Council. Yes, there were a number of meetings of this council, but we don't see a qualitative breakthrough in our relations. And now, one of our main goals and tasks is to be prepared to the Washington and NATO summit, where all president, our civil society, and our partners, like partners from Lithuania, we should need to receive a very particular signal. Ukraine will be a NATO member. The negotiation will start on these particular conditions, not when the stars will align themselves, not like it was said during Vilnius summit. We are not astrologists, we are politicians. Defined very particular conditions for Ukraine to become a NATO member, or acknowledge that Ukraine is on its own and Ukraine will fight on its own against Russia. We will not surrender, no matter whether US and NATO allies will support us, because we will support until the very end. What's happening in the Washington? Yesterday, 58 against 41 in our favor in Senate. So like we need 60 votes, yes, and then there will be after we pass the Senate, it will be Congress voting. We will, but please pass this word to all NATO partners that Ukraine will remain independent in NATO member or together with NATO. Because if we are not, will not be NATO member, we will have to think about own security measures, including our own nuclear weapons, which we surrendered under presumption that our sovereignty and security will be guaranteed by other countries. Yes, thank you, Ihor. For us, information policy is very important, because Ukrainian society is supporting Ukraine joining NATO and EU up to the level of 98% when the polls are conducted, but we are lagging the understanding of how this process should be implemented. So maybe when Ukraine was under less threat, this issue was not that important for our society. Now, when Ukrainian state is threatened, the opinion changed significantly into support of this issue. Yes, of course, we cannot make every Ukrainian an expert on security issues, but we have to educate them on certain basic level of understanding of the policies, and that's where our strategy on informing society is very important. And there was relevant program adopted, and I want to ask Deputy of the Department of Information Policy and Information Security of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, Oleksandr Makobriy, to tell us about this strategy a little bit more. I want to say that information policy, it is, and it will be important, and I am very glad to see here people with whom we conducted hundreds of events to raise awareness about population, about NATO, about cooperation with North Atlantic Alliance. Indeed, information sphere is quite sensitive. While we were developing our cooperation with NATO, and the very first document that was regulating working on these matters was the state target program on European and Atlantic integration for 2000-2007. Later we had a new program, similar one, year 2008-2011. Institutionally, we had two main drivers of that programs, two centers on European Atlantic integrations, and in 2009 there was established Coordination Bureau on NATO integration. 2009 Coordination Bureau at the Cabinet of Ministers. In 2010, you know the events when Yanukovych came to power, what happened, but it was very interesting situation. When I was working in the State Committee of Television and Radio, that was patronizing this program. So for 1 full year we were able to extend that program in order for it not to be closed down. And of course, after that, Yanukovych didn't extend it after 2011. In 2017, after the Revolution of Dignity, President of Ukraine signed the concept of improving information of the society, and this to be adopted until that was enforced until 2021. What's about today? In August, we adopted strategy on informing society on North Atlantic integration. Having many years of experience, we decided to move in the following way. So we will start working with 5 target audience. Target audience number 1 are state officials, because they are the ones who should take measures and actions in order to inform citizens about European Atlantic integrations. Number 2 target audience were local self-government officials of the territorial communities and with the task to work at the lowest level possible of these officials. The target audience number 3 is the mass media, because they are multiplying and disseminating this kind of information. Target audience is Ukrainian civil society, who are very important element of these information actions. And number 5, international community, because international community should be aware about our homework on issues of North Atlantic integration. Action plan, if we talk chronologically, back in September 21, we adopted strategy, signed it, and action plan was approved in January 2022. But full-scale invasion changed a lot of things, and in my opinion, we have to review both action plan and the strategic goals. As a conclusion, for today, we need to revise this action plan. Because now what is important and discussed today is to be focused on informing international community. But we should not forget our internal target audiences. Why it's important? Because issue of North Atlantic integration, and it's one of the major pillars of Russia's propaganda, and if we will not inform our society on those issues, that will be done by Russians, and we cannot allow that Russians to lead on that information topic. As Serhiy Fedorovich mentioned, we see now that the support of North Atlantic integration is among population is like more emotional, based on the security situation, and we see certain cases that people. So but we still have cases when people who were supposed to work on those issues, they don't see discretion between Ukraine-EU and Ukraine-NATO integration. And this issue, we should work more on those issues. And we need to, this work should be a synergy between state bodies, civil society, mass media, and our international partners. I want to say words of thanks to the representative office to Ukraine and to NIDC for support. So we are almost 20 years you are supporting us, and I want to wish the Civic League NATO Ukraine to grow stronger. Thank you, Oleksandr. Because I would say that program partnership for peace pays a lot of attention to the information war countermeasures, and based on the Ukrainian experience of fighting and protecting its informational environment against Russian lies and twisting of facts and history. So I know that NATO established a center of countermeasures against Russian propaganda after the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russia against Ukraine. And due to the fact that Russia against the controlled mass media in Europe, paying huge amounts of money, created very high-quality fakes, and mixed with some truths, and they distorted a perception of what is happening in Ukraine. And I think Ukrainian historians will be able to tell how these things were developing. And I want to pass the floor to a military historian, Ms. Volodymyr Ogryzko, leading researcher of the Scientific Research Center of the National Defense University. I will speak not only as a historian, but I will speak as a historian, Volodymyr Ogryzko. I am information about me is available online. I want to start from the last point, because I was intended to say it at the end. I was tasked to prepare a course of lectures on Russian statehood. Yeah. So we are now in the Defense University conducting a strategic level courses on the NATO level, on the operational and strategic level. So the highest level we had was L4, L5. This is the present, and for this highest level, this high level course, I'm supposed to prepare a lecture, and that's the last week that I'm spending preparing this lecture. I'm remembering my brother who received a medal for, and he lives in Kharkiv, and his wife is Kharkiv citizens, and her sister is married in Belgorod. And these two sisters, when they communicate between each other, they say, "You came and killing us. Why did you came?" And when these two sisters was talking, and her husband said, "You are stupid women. Your land is on the cemetery, and we own that land." This is that was the reason to end communication between two sisters. But this is an example of how Russian information policy made citizens of Belgorod believe that Ukraine is Russian land. So that's I see Francois, officer of French army. Yeah, Francois. Yeah, just we are meeting by coincidence. They were visiting our university to exchange experience on planning military operations. And when we were finalizing our work, and we asked what is your opinion about the goals of Putin, we said that they want to capture Lugansk, Donetsk Oblast, or they want to reach Dnipro. I said, no, Olivier, they want to reach Warsaw, Berlin, and Paris. Olivier said, it's impossible, it's craziness. And I said, read what Russians are writing and what Putin is telling you. He said the territory that we still call Ukraine, they are they want to take over our land, our country, so a nation. So our only option is to win, otherwise we will be dead. So any words that they will stop at certain oblast borders, you are wrong. They want to destroy Ukraine totally. They want to, so they're working based on the premises of Golden Horde. Move until the last sea. So, and they're ready to sacrifice anything. They want to burn cities, destroy states, but the highest value is to for their horses to drink from the last sea. Yeah, and just I want your attention. Putin's and Russians' ideology based on historical roots. Karamzin wrote the history of Russian state. We know, the first Duchess of Ukraine, Volodymyr, and Ihor and Olga, and Putin erected the monument to Volodymyr as the Dutch of the Rus state. And then Ukraine historian Khrushchevsky started to write the history of Ukraine-Rus. And tonight I thought, why we compare the history of Ukraine and history from Russian state? Why we compare empire of Ruriks and empire of Romanovs? Let's look from the point of view of succession. Today's Russian Federation is successor of what? Of Soviet Union. So they're successor of Soviet Union. 1992, they adopt the federal agreement. So, and as USSR was successor of Russian Empire, Russian Empire was created by the Peter I. When they were signing agreements with Sweden, he forced them, Swedish Emperor, to acknowledge him as all Russian Emperor, and this was the variant that was supported by the former rector of Kiev Mohil Academy back in the Middle Ages. So, Russian Empire was a successor of the Moscow Duchy, and the Moscow Duchy was founded by Ivan the Terrible, and it was so the Grand Duchy of Muscovy was successor of Moscow Duchy. So. And in European language, it is very difficult to translate the word knyaz, which is Dutch. The Grand Dutch or Grand Prince. But this is it's very difficult to translate properly the title of those princes or duchess. So that Principality or Duchy of Muscovy was established as a hereditary territory of Alexander Nevsky, and it was established in 1012 to 27, this Oleksandr Nevsky, he received from the Golden Horde Khan to establish the Duchy of Muscovy back in 1227. So they are not successors of the Vikings or Scandinavians. They are successors of the Golden Horde. Their state is Muscovy, and they were allowed to exist by Golden Horde. This is like what information I'm planning to mention during that level 4 course. Like, this information is not available online. Like, everyone is talking about that succession between the Kiev Rus and Russian Empire. Other things I want to mention. We work, cooperate and participate in a number of Ukraine-NATO programs, and I want to mention briefly what are our achievements as a National Defense University. One of the important achievements, and I was part of the project, the White Book on anti-terrorist operation, and which was approved at the NATO Security Committee, and it was translated into English and recommended as a source of information about what was happening back in 2014-2016. At the time, Minister of Defense was supposed to present this book, but and as dignitary was presenting it. I'm very proud to be a participant of this project. We very detailedly explained which particular defense sector body was fighting, including National Police, National Guards, State Immigration Service. So we also be mentioning the role of the Ministry of Veterans. So I want to mention that we continue working, and this is like brand newly published. These are books that contain information not available in any other articles. It was based on the documents of various level of accessibility. So, but we made it open for public, and we intended that it will be interesting to our foreign partners. So, and we expect that this book will be very interesting for international partners. In the book, chapter 6, when we say about the failure of Operation Z, the separate chapter is devoted to the to our cooperation programs with NATO, and that made it possible to stop the Russians' attack. So to repel Russians from part of the territories. I'm going back to the history, because Kiev hereditary. This is history of Kiev Rus Principality, and so the Russians now they want to eliminate Ukrainian nations, because they consider us as territories spoiled by Polish people, and who created certain funny language, and only. But this is not the place for Ukrainians. This is place only for Russian mir. So and so you haven't heard the word, the symbol Z on that Russian vehicles doesn't mean that it was Zapad, not like as Russian Ministry of Defense announced. On the first very days of the military full-scale invasion, when they said that that YZ it is classified. So importance of that. Later, Ministry of Defense said it was idea of Alexander Dugin. He mentioned it in his article. So he said like time Z on the clock of history. He said that our military operation Z, is only beginning of the large way. When Ukraine will fall, things only will start. Things will only start with the fall of Ukraine. It's a battle of light and darkness between East and West, and that's what he says in all his books. So another book we are proud of is practical and theoretical aspects of hybrid war of Russia against Ukraine. It was prepared in cooperation with Norwegian Defense Academy and Ukrainian National Defense Academy, and we are researching this war from the very beginning, and one of the results of this research is this book. These books are just only printed a couple of days ago. I only can show you pictures, but also I want to mention that military history currently moves to next level of functioning, because the system that was of influencing personnel that existed before is now revised. It was a Russian system of how to influence and support morale of armed forces personnel. This was copied from Soviet Union templates. Now this system has been transformed significantly. A lot of functions of forming patriotism are put on the military history. There are directives of Zaluzhny, by the directive of Zaluzhny, he created Center of Research of the Military History of Ukraine at the General Staff. We brought in all leading historians of Ukraine. The Dean of Kyiv National University, he went as a volunteer in 112 Territorial Brigade, and they were defending Kyiv against Russians. When the center was established, Mr. Patrylak and a dozen of historians started to work on the military history of Ukraine. In the National Defense University, 3 months ago, we established Institute of Military History also. This is a new body, and by coincidence, academician Valery Smoley, he's meeting with the head of this institute, and they are now coordinating the activities of our military historians. So just want to say that we met to talk about the NATO cooperation, but we are in a state of war with Russia, and that's an important issue. But what I want to stress is that we are very closely cooperating with the officers of NATO countries on many issues. Thank you for attention. Thank you, Valery, for presenting your point of view. And dear colleagues, civil society, when it's active, it's very important for every state, and there is a structure that is creating network that is Networking Civil Society of NATO Countries in Ukraine, Association of Atlantic Alliance, and we have such Atlantic Councils in Ukraine too. And I want to pass the floor to the President of the Atlantic Council of Ukraine, Oksana Grigoryeva. Thank you, Serhiy. Thank you to the participants. When we attend the event with you have the main topic, but when you hear to the speakers, you have new ideas you want to introduce to the audience. Of course, I want to add to the words of Mr. Volodymyr Ogryzko. I work in the armed forces. This is my main area of activity, but my position in the Atlantic Council is my additional public work. So I'm meeting people who were at the beginning of this North Atlantic movement, and when I was a small girl and I studied in the Soviet school, and they told us that in year 2000 we will achieve communism, and I finished school already when you were able to protest against being a communist party, and I was very actively involved in process of bringing Ukraine to NATO. And we believed, and experts like when they were telling, oh, if Ukraine will become, many experts said after the Orange Revolution Ukraine will become a NATO member. Then we waited for the membership action plan. Yes, and we know that we had this window of lost opportunities. Like back in 2008, we had all this action plan. It was almost action plan to the membership, and everyone was talking about it. And as our policy of joining NATO had its ups and downs. And when Yanukovych came to power, he stopped these aspirations. Yes, all the structures that were created to bring Ukraine to NATO, they were closed down in his one order. So, and for a long time we were not able to move into the directions, and at that time politicians pushed the issue of the non-bloc country, which we saw with which it ended for Ukraine, and now we are back to the stage of increased aspirations, and we shouldn't be losing it. Yes, and when the war started, Valery, I'm very grateful to you that you present to foreign officers, students, what Russia is in essence, what's happening here in Ukraine, that this is the heritage of Mongols. Because back in 2019, when we attended Brussels, we at the meeting of the Atlantic Council youth meetings, and my colleague, who is now commander of the 2nd International Battalion, he listened to the speeches of the representatives of NATO countries, and they said that at Donbass we have civil war. We were one step from the international scandal, because like Russia is working to so much on international level that they are distorting the perception of many foreign young people who later become officers, join armies, and then it's very difficult when they grow older. It's very difficult to change their perception, and they say, yeah, Russia, they're a normal country, let's work to them. Even now, in the situation of full-scale invasion, Russia continues to play this game and telling let's work as before and let's put Ukraine aside. So this is their continuous policy, and all these romantic dreams of Ukraine joining NATO, we always had some obstacles to them. So, for example, when we were talking about Ukrainian forces adopting NATO standards that were just newly formed, and we can say that maybe NATO countries will start Ukrainian military standards, because no state in the world has such combat experience as Ukrainian army. So that's what they should learn from us in order to prevent such what happens now in Ukraine. And of course we very grateful for the support with equipment, military equipment and weapons, but it's still not enough to win this war in nearest future. So, and also you mentioned the initial goals of the Partnership for Peace programs when the first liaison officers were appointed, but from this romantic period, I want to remind you that besides the work on developing human resources, there were commitments for material support, like participation in peacekeeping operations, and Ukraine was providing a separate battalion for peacekeeping operations in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And for example, and I want to say that now there are a lot of foreigners who are fighting as volunteers in international battalions. Yeah, we don't. They are not fighting as a part of peacekeeping forces. Maybe if we have any agreements on peacekeeping support operations, why we cannot apply for the peacekeeping forces to provide security in Ukraine? So I want to frame our cooperation with NATO in this area also too. Yeah. So because yes, we all know the Article 5 of NATO. Yes, if Ukraine was a NATO member, that would change a lot. But and with regards to allocation of resources, we want to say that Ukraine provided airlift capabilities to NATO countries within this program. Yeah, from with Mi-8 helicopters and Illusion helicopters, 2 ships of Ukrainian Navy were also participating in NATO programs. Things that we don't have now, but Ukraine was giving those capabilities to NATO when participating in joint military exercises. Yes, we had very extensive cooperation on trainings, and we remember the military exercises at Cherokee Lan and in Starichi, International Peacekeeping Center that hosted many NATO countries' servicemen. We conducted many youth-intended projects, and we conducted sport events within the scope of that program, and it was a part of the informational activities on NATO North Atlantic integrations. And yes, until year 2013 we were able still to conduct in the military units of all Ukraine some sport events to promote the cooperation between Ukraine and NATO. And I'm very proud that young servicemen from young people who were serving at the time, they are now already they were participants of those programs. So now they're the deputy at the level of deputy minister. So we lost a lot of opportunities, of course, and anyway, we don't see our future without NATO. So I hope that this year, when the NATO's it's NATO 75 years anniversary, and I believe that at the summit, at this anniversary summit, Ukraine will be invited to NATO. Yes, during this year, when this program, Partnership for Peace, our Navy cooperated a lot with NATO, and what was achieved together with Ukraine, between Ukraine and NATO, I want to give the floor to the head of the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21, Mr. Pavlo Lakiychuk. I know that we are limited in time. I will be very concise. To understand what is program Partnership for Peace, we need to go back to year 1993, like 1994. It was only 3 years after we left Soviet Union, and the knowledge about NATO was, everyone knew that that's our most probable enemy. So who are opposing us in Black Sea. So back in those years, 1993-94, when we adopted this program, this was change of perception, worldview perception for the military at that time. So because these words partnership, we started to talk about partnership with NATO, and because as we see the result of this program, when 16 countries joined NATO, there were consequences of that happened in future. Yeah, but at that time we regarded this program as partnership, and I remember the first our joint exercises in Bulgaria, Breeze, when we were introducing each other, Ukrainian military, Bulgarian military, so, and we understood that there are no so many differences between us. And then Bulgaria joined NATO as a member, and there were Sea Breeze exercises that became a signature event of cooperation between Ukraine and NATO. Yeah, but So these are achievements, but let's talk about the downsides. One of the first countries who joined this program was Russian Federation. Yeah, right after us, after we signed, and in my opinion, so this is my recent opinion. This was a very big blunder of our alliance, of allies. Mr. Petro can say that when we were at Furlis, at British flagship, and we had delegation from Russian sailors, and they were sailors from the no, they were not actually sailors, but they were Russian intelligence officers, and they were attending that ship as the enemy ship, yeah, and it was an aim to spy on this. And that's back in 2017, National Defense Academy, when they have annual NATO Week event, and in 2017 we had the head of the delegation of NATO, Petro Pavel. He was the head of the delegation at the time, and Sergei Fedorovich and Oksana was on that event, and they asked. So we're talking about year 2017, 5 years ago, before the invasion. Yeah, 5 years before the invasion. So a couple of years after 2014, and we say, you say that you understand everything, you see everything what's happening. Why you take no measures? The answer was, starting from 1994, strategy of NATO is about partnership, and under this strategy we created a lot of personnel specialists on partnership. Yeah, partnership everywhere. And then Russia attacks Georgia, Russia attacks Ukraine. What kind of But it's not. It has nothing to do with partnership. We have only people who are used to work on partnership, not on deterrence. So we don't have specialists on that issues. And it took another 5 years and full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine. It's not. Now we're talking not about deterrence, but we talk about defense. And NATO is still growing the necessary human resources for those needs. So we should talk about intensifying those changes. Yeah, we understand that membership in NATO is not something from the field of dreams. Yeah, sooner or later, NATO will join Ukraine. And thank you, Pavlo. Dear colleagues, we have the first deputy Minister of Defense and online. So if you have questions, let's go for Q&A. There was mention of the Cyber Jura program, and so we've heard how the story was presented by Volodymyr Ogryzko, and our pupil from this Cyber Jura project. They are putting that history at the map, and this is and they make it accessible for children with opportunity to model historical and military events, and that's how we establish Ukrainian cyber environment. Children learn to think critically, and also we talk about national patriotic education, and children are learning cyber tools that can be useful for them if they will decide to pursue military career. So, like yesterday, we had a phenomenal event. I want to say thanks to Mr. Dariusz Slot for participating in it. And on the principles of cognitive management, we conducted meeting of Lithuanian, Polish, and Ukrainian cadets, and discussed the results of informational activities of the cadets on when they were modeling hot in battle. They were modeling the Hetman Sagaidachiny's war against Moscovidachi. These are very practical actions on establishing a joint army of 3 nations. So, like, it's a mini NATO on the level of school children, and Ukrainian cadet will go to Poland and will teach them how to work on the technology, and so Ukrainians will introduce Polish cadets on GIS systems, and we're talking about cadets, pupils, school pupils, not officers, not lecturers. And I invite all military attaché who are present here for further cooperation. Our Kyiv Military Lyceum joining this project. We are looking for partners to jointly model with cadets from Czech Republic, for Britain, military events, and this is how they achieve military interoperability of future officers. Yes, and I believe every serviceman knows how much it is important for every military in terms of interoperability, and and thanks to the activity of cadets, adults, they learn about new technology opportunities and how to work effectively in the modern cyber environment. So again, I want you to join Cyber Jura project. We can extend a number of topics. So, like last week, we started working on the dismantling of Russia and dismantling Russian myths. A couple of words. Just to add what Ivan said, another historical fact: when Rzeczpospolita was uniting Ukraine, Lithuania, and for 4 months our king was the king who conquered Moscow. Yes, Mr. Leonid, do you have anything to add? Leonid Polakov, first Deputy Minister of Defense, former. Thank you for initiative, for organizing this important event. We've heard a lot of interesting thoughts about this program. We know that in 30 years a lot of things changed, both in Ukraine and within NATO. I want to recollect such things as because 30 years ago less than 20% of Ukrainian population thought that NATO is not aggressive alliance, and now in Ukraine we have Ukraine's constitution. We wrote down that Ukraine is aspiring to become a NATO member. So inside Ukraine we've seen a tectonic change on perception of NATO. In terms of changes outside Ukraine, something remains persistent. So as certain years ago, our partners haven't seen Ukraine as member of NATO, and they still, maybe some of them already seen of them, but not everyone. But on the other hand, this organization changed drastically, because 30 years ago it was a defense alliance, and now it turned to be a peacekeeping alliance, and now they just started to conduct defense exercises to become defense alliance again. And if the President of the United States will become a person that will not that will remove the Article 5 or maybe remove US from this alliance, we need to be prepared also to such changes, and not to follow the Brussels democracy inertia activities. Yes, we're very glad for support that we are receiving, but we need to have to be to see what is our realistic future. I see that European countries should lessen their dependence on US in security, and in this way EU can guarantee its security, because the political situation in US now doesn't guarantee that. Just like we can talk a lot about what was happening in those last 3 years, but like I mentioned also the most persistent one. Yes, all these actions that we're taking on the partnership were we spoke about they're important, but we have to understand that now we should that the partnership phase should be ending and moving towards membership stage. So otherwise we should like adjust our goals, because if we will continue to think in the framework of partnership, yes, in next 30 years we will also meet and we'll talk about the partnership. Still we'll be talking about partnership. Let's talk about Finlandization of Ukraine to NATO. Yeah, the very different context of term Finlandization. I want to pass the floor Ms. Ihor Koziy. Dear colleagues, thank you for I want to thank Armed Forces of Ukraine for protecting us, and to everyone who is contributing to the joint victory of Ukraine. Because we see a significant result of our joint efforts of cooperating with NATO. I want to pass my greetings from Washington, where I'm now as the recipient of Fulbright scholarship. I want to share my expectations and my forecasts and on like from our allies from US among academia. I'm visiting events organized by Wilson Center, by Harvard University. They recently had a conference on Ukraine. There is a big demand on Ukrainian experts in US media on military topics. Of course, there are experts, but they should be present in the process of North Atlantic integration, and they should be involved in that. It should be it can be a very powerful tool, in my opinion. So we should establish permanent presence of Ukrainian experts in US and global media environment. Now Ukraine is perceived as the European country, not a post-Soviet country. Even though the experts that Russia was supporting from the post-Soviet period, they for them to change their framework and mindset, we need to. They're ready to change, but these changes are initiated by the American society, who support us sincerely. So, and these American citizens, they file petitions to their senators. They promote true Ukrainian history. So I would say that to add a little bit optimism to this process. Yeah. For 30 years, we not all the time we had successes, but I still see a big importance of these activities. And thank you for the organizers for this event and reminding us about the importance of this alliance. Miss Olga, what's the current local time in Washington? I wasn't planning to participate in this event, but because I woke up early, so starting from 3 a.m., but it's 5 in the morning now in Washington. And Mr. Petro wants to say, Olga, you said that you're feeling lack of the experts. That's why the strategy of communication on North Euro-Atlantic integration, Ministry of Culture was tasked to form a pool of experts. Please speak to Serhiy Dzherzh, and he is with Oleksandr Makobriy, can provide list of experts. Thank you for. Yes, maybe I have this list, but the system is. We need to talk about independent experts. For example, it would be great to work more with our public media, or and we should not work with experts that are politically involved. So maybe we should talk about the variety of experts and the ways of bringing them closer to the mass media of United States, integrating them into that media environment. Thank you for the opportunity, Sergey, dear participants of the roundtable. I'm very pleased to see all of you. And indeed, today's anniversary is important. 30 years. we've heard a lot of critical observations, and they are totally correct. And we should say that this program was part of the intent of Central European countries to join NATO. And with regards to Ukraine, we cannot. Unfortunately, the speaker is. We cannot hear the speaker. Thank you, Ihor. We have technical issues with connection. Thank you. We've heard Professor Ihor Todorov from Uzhhorod, and we are about to finish. If you have anything to add.
And for everyone for organizing this and for attending. I guess for the international partners, what is key for us from events like this is understanding the strategy, the plan, where the issues are, where the shortfalls are, and where we can assist. So I guess my question is, what would you see as your top 3 priorities in terms of NATO interoperability? Because at the moment we're talking probably more interoperability than integration, and I hope integration will come quickly, sooner than later. But in terms of achieving interoperability, what do you see as your perhaps top 3 priorities? Over. Thank you.
Дякую. Ну, можливо, я почну, а колеги
Maybe I will start and my colleagues will add something. For us, interoperability is with NATO is important in to be practically so we should become, like as our colleague said, we should be de facto a NATO country, and then this issue will be solved de jure. Nobody is preventing us from achieving these criteria, and yes, on this matter, so the interoperability will make Ukrainian armed forces more effective and and it will bring additional capabilities to Ukrainian armed forces. So we should see that there should be changes in the system of the Ministry of Defense, of General Staff, and to raise awareness about the personnel of these institutions on understanding this interoperability criteria. To continue what Serhiy said on the top 3 priorities, I want to say that right now the Olga from Washington DC was talking, and she said, I have a list of experts, but we need real experts. Let's look at the strategy on the communication on the European integration strategy that was signed back in 2021. It is written in black and white ink that in state bodies don't understand what is NATO alliance is. The first priority, brains. We should fix the brains of our dignitaries. Volodymyr Stanislavovich left, yeah, but he was a witness when the former Deputy Secretary General Oleksandr Birchenko, he confuse the official text of 23rd article of NATO Bucharest summit. Why are you worried? Why are you worrying? Ukraine will become a NATO member. So that's why I said, Mr. Alexander, official text says може стати. And this is priority number one, to have clear understanding about the dignitaries. Number two, and if we talk that the process of joining NATO is led by our politicians, and like when Miss Iryna Nikorak was the key player on Euro-Atlantic integration, when I publicly asked her, do a newly elected parliament has a checklist? And she frankly said, we don't have that checklist, but we have plan of legislation activities that we think it's a checklist, and that was a very obvious sign for us about absence of such checklist. And we know that our armed forces are very moving strongly on achieving interoperability with NATO, but we have to totally change partnership goals and to move the interoperability objectives as with an example of Finland and Sweden, because Ukraine is also enhanced opportunity partner. That's why we should work with Operation Department of NATO HQ and with our specialists, increase that cooperation. In 2006, we had an event in Sevastopol, and Deputy Chief of General Staff of Navy on Euro-Atlantic integration, Captain First Rank Andriy Rezhenko, he said that Ukrainian Navy are ready to join, technically ready to join NATO in 6 months. So sometime passed since that declaration, but yeah, we're still not ready. But it's some anecdote, but I would say that Ukraine, whose armed forces are most prepared to, it's the only state outside NATO who was providing its forces to the quick reaction forces of NATO, and so no other non-NATO member was able to provide their forces to NATO quick to pass the standards of that quick reaction NATO forces. And Ukrainian units were the only ones that participated in real military combat operations that can be conducted according to Article 5. So even it includes operations in Black Sea, when we were sending 2 ships who were capable to achieve military objectives. And now during the wartime, Ukraine is learning how to use the equipment and ships of NATO, and I think that the skepticism of many European politicians that Ukrainian servicemen will not be able to learn the NATO equipment. They were talking in this manner about the artillery, about the HIMARSes, and this all appeared to be lie and fake. So Ukrainian armed forces are ready for significant interoperability with NATO countries. When we talk about political issues, there are political issues that we cannot talk about that for sure now, because Ivan Holenko. In my system of coordinates of point of view is unified information environment with unified world model of world to be present, joint values, joint goals, joint tasking. On technologically, it's cooperation with ArcGIS, Smart Defense, 2010-2011, and Cyber Jura. It's a game for children, but that's what will create this interoperability. Everything else, it's secondary. The political discrepancies, it's secondary. Differences in equipment is secondary. So things that Zaluzhny is telling to us about technological advantage. So we need to be in a unified informational system of the world. 3D models of the city, electronic maps, command and control systems to be unified, and that will move the secondary tasks on political and technical levels. Thank you, Serhiy. And I would also define 3 priorities. Number 1, governments and command and control.
And number 3, resources and technologies. Sorry, thank you. And when you say government,
are you talking about MOD versus general staff structures, or can you just expand slightly on governments?
Even higher than that.
Навіть вищого рівня. Thank you for being concise, Leonid. Dear colleagues, we are Serhiy, and with this we adjourn our meeting.